You're unmuted. All right.
Ready, Hannah?
Yep.
Awesome. We'll call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting for the Monroe Planning Commission, Monday, June 10th, 2024. It's 7 p.m. and we'll ask Hannah to take roll.
Commissioners present and establishing a quorum. We have Commissioners Blair, Bull, Dawkins, Lockhart, Lowe, Nugent, and Petrino.
All right, thank you. This is a time for people to speak to the Planning Commission in person on issues related to the city of Monroe, except those issues subject to a public hearing. No public hearing tonight. When invited to speak, please approach the podium and state your name and association with the city or area of residence. The timer will then be started. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Davis crew. All right, thank you. Anyone in the waiting room at all, Hannah?
No one online.
We'll go to our most recent prior meeting, May 13th, Planning Commission minutes. Any edits or comments? Melanie,
I move to approve the minutes from the May 13th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
go to second.
Second.
Thanks, Carla. Commissioners in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you very much. Item 5.1, we have middle housing draft code with Anita.
Good evening, yes. Nice to see everyone.
Good to see you.
So I'm here to follow up on our discussion on middle housing. Our last discussion was at the March 25th meeting. So included in the packet is the draft code, which I haven't made any changes yet. Wanted to have some more discussion before I make any changes to see what the planning commission thinks of some things we talked about last time. And then, so I don't have a formal presentation today. I'll just go through some of the items in the agenda packet. So on our last discussion, we talked about basically if you're okay in the general format of the code that I brought forward, and it seemed like it was fine as far as the formatting of it. And some ideas came up as far as we wanted to be mindful of displacement. And so we wanted to come up with some strategies on how to minimize that. Also finding some creative ways to allow middle housing, something different, because we pretty much know what's needed as far as the type of housing, but how are we gonna get that in our city? And then also there was a strong desire to have development standards. So we make sure that when infill developments come in, new developments come in, that they match the surrounding neighborhoods. And kind of how are we gonna get those developers to come into the city to do those quality developments? So one of the ideas that came up was this notion of inclusionary zoning. So it's a housing program, and it requires affordable housing units to be included with new residential development. Or there's another option where it requires the developer to put money into this fund for construction of units somewhere else in the community. So there's two different options that we can use there. So in the packet, there's a pretty long document. It was mostly just for informational purposes only. It does give some case scenarios. And then the very last case study was on Redmond. So they have this in their code already. So I did pull that section of the code, and we can talk about that later as well. So when you're looking at the elements of an inclusionary zoning or inclusionary housing program, we're looking at requiring the minimum quantity of affordable housing units. So usually it's done by percentage. So that's something that we can talk about. I mean, we could start at 10%, and we can go up from there. It's just something that would be the minimum requirement. Then we're looking at the targeted income range of households. So we're looking at the different AMI levels. So we're looking at 50% up to 80% AMI for rental, 80% up to 120% for ownership. So there's two different programs. We can do rental and we can do ownership. But this is something that, we can talk about and we can determine what, income levels we want to focus on. Another, element is time period. So, looking at those other case studies, it looks like most of them are around 50 years. So that would be the requirement that those units would have to be affordable for 50 years. Then we need to figure out the geographic scope of the regulations. So usually these are limited to areas, like downtown or mixed use development areas. But, they can be applied throughout the city, and that's just something that as, planning commission and council, if we move forward, that we'll talk about that more and see what areas of town we want to focus on. So to give you some pros and cons of inclusionary zoning. So pros would be, of course, a production of more affordable housing for low and moderate income residents. The opportunity to build, to have new developments and buildings come in that have a mix of income levels. And then some cons would be, it's a program, so the city would have to administer this, come up with a process on how we monitor to make sure that these dwelling units remain affordable. And so that would take staff time. And then if there's turnover in staff, we need to find out who would be responsible for that. And then sometimes, when you're doing this type of program, the community might, be fearful of some type of change or, in the community character. So we just want to make sure that, that's in the back of your mind as far as a con. And then also, if, the local housing market isn't strong enough, this could discourage developers to come in. So just market rate housing, to come in. So we have to be, mindful of that as well. There is a state law, RCW 36.78.540 that, gives the authority for cities and jurisdictions to have this type of, program in our code. So we can do it. So just so that's an option. But before establishing this, yes, we need to make sure that, this fits our, housing policies that are coming up in our comprehensive plan. And it'll further, it will foster, growth in our community. So we want to make sure that, we're mindful of that as well. So I just wanted to, kind of go through, and if you wanted to take a look, first of all, did you have any questions about, the documents? There was a white paper on achieving lasting affordability through inclusionary housing. It was pretty straightforward as far as just explaining what it is a little bit more. But then I also wanted to go, oh yes, question.
Yeah. Kind of reading through this and like seeing kind of the case studies and different things, it really seemed like the biggest problems were the monitoring area.
Yeah.
And, which I think we talked before, at least for me personally, I wasn't really thinking of it in those type of terms. So is that really something that's sustainable to do? And then, like, if we, in this program, would there be like CCNRs or something like that, that a rental or a homeowner has to maintain?
Yes, there would have to be some type of document. I don't know if it would be a CCNR or not, but yes, it definitely have to be some type of document that was recorded with the property. To make sure that, if it's sold, that the, restrictions follow it as far as the Board of Housing.
Okay, it kind of sounds like I thought about it, like, when it came up for a resale, there needed to be a lot of work done
Yeah.
to bring it back up to, even to that lower value. So, and it talked about doing some type of education for some of these people, you know, whether it's a renter or homeowner, to educate them on this. So it seems like, I mean, I love the idea of the middle housing, and I think it really sounds ideal for some people. I just, you know, kind of leery on this whole thing of this whole monitoring, and, you know, do we really have people to do that, I guess.
Okay, yeah, and just to go back a little, so, the inclusionary zoning, the middle housing code would still go forward, whether we decide to do this program or not. This would just require those developers to, provide affordable housing units in their new development. So this is,
So it is
this is
kind
what
of
this
two
program,
different.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that makes
so,
more sense to
yeah.
me. Okay.
Yeah, this is just a way to say, you have to do this.
Go ahead, Bill.
And then when it comes to the monitoring, and then if, for instance, we found out that something like, that somebody was not in compliance, what then, what next?
Yes, and that's something that, in creating the program, we would have to talk about and see what that would be like. Definitely, yeah. But that's a good point. So compliance is also one that we would have to add in there.
So just going back to the developer requirement for affordability or fees. So that's not a revolutionary kind of idea. Seattle's doing that right now, where developers are required to have some affordability options for residents or pay a fee that would kind of equate to kind of a discounted amount of the unit, right? So that doesn't seem very grasp or hard to administer. At what size would a city have to be to have a housing authority? To have some other, either government organization or NGO that would take care of the administration of.
I think like,
The
yeah, was
affordability.
it the housing? Authority that.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at, because cities, I know city resources are strained, especially if it, got to be to the community development department or someone that was responsible for administering, all the intricacies of affordability and sales and working with developers. So I just,
Cause we have the county housing authority, right? There's
Yes.
Snohomish County Housing
Yes,
Authority.
yes, Pasco. That's a good question. I can, talk to them and see how that works, or if there's a collaboration that we can do with the housing authority.
to utilize their
Yeah,
knowledge and resources.
yes, yes.
The other one, just, I'm familiar with Arch in King County, city of Enumclaw, when I was down there, participated in that program. And it's a not-for-profit, so it kind of be like AHA. But it's not each individual jurisdiction is doing this. There is an umbrella. Now, you've probably seen Arch has been in trouble recently in the news. Last couple of years, there was concern about how they were using the funding. But I would suspect it is bigger than the city of Monroe can do, but it might be, like Pasco or AHA, those two organizations that have, partner agencies working together, would be my suspicion.
And then also another point too, that, what Seattle's doing is also so our code currently, our affordable housing code, it gives developers incentives for providing, affordable housing units or, bonuses, density bonuses, but it doesn't currently require them to provide it. So that's the key, is if we want to require developers to provide those units or not.
Kelsey?
In that document, I think that the ones that were mostly successful required it, right?
Required, yeah.
They're hands down, that worked and certified.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
way more than other ones, it's just like,
And I know in Redmond, it works just because of, they're a bigger city and more development and things like that. So we just have to see that gauge, like big city versus a smaller city, if that would still work here.
Carla?
I know like on your number 2 for the elements, you're talking about keeping that up to 50 years, right? Or, yeah. I wanna, maybe it's 3. So if you have these middle housing and they're for lower income, so they're lower price. Is there something built into it where somebody buys one and then they sell it in 6 years and they have to keep it at a certain level? So it doesn't now come up.
Yeah, so it would, it would, it would still be affordable for the 50 years.
So there's a formula or some way,
Yeah.
the max they can
Yeah.
sell it for.
Yeah, and I know that, Housing Hope has some, owner homes, and that's it's exactly a covenant that goes with the property that you have to, it has to be affordable for them. That's right.
Okay.
So could we talk about Anna's little, community development department monthly report? So there's summer lane development.
Yes.
Are you gonna, is this something that is easily replicated? Does this fill the middle housing need?
I believe it does. That's not my project.
It says
It's the,
5-unit attached, they were 1,100 to 1,200 square feet. I
Okay.
think houses are about $400 a square foot.
Those
In
were,
Monroe.
those were sold for over 500,000.
Oh, it says 469.
Yeah, I think just one. I don't think all of them were sold that low. We can get back to you that.
Well, that's okay. I was just looking at the pricing and
yes,
where they were priced
yes.
at.
So,
That was a market rate project. That
yeah.
by no means is affordable in the sense of, excuse me, I like your term, attainable housing.
Yeah, compared to a
The hill.
detached residential unit, yes, it's more attainable than that one. So the model does fit, middle housing as far as attached units. And then the idea is, yes, more people can come in at a lower price. But it's still a lot, $500,000 still.
But that was without any,
Right, was just a straight up market rate,
Yeah.
no affordable housing units.
but that's what we're trying to do is keep the dwellings small enough
Yes.
that if it's $400 a square foot on average, that somebody in the 450 to 500 range, which is middle housing,
Yes,
could afford,
correct,
right?
correct.
Without restricting, like outright restricting the size of the dwelling.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
From,
My other question, like they do the small cottages or the cluster, which I think is just adorable, but.
Yeah.
So you have like a common area,
Mhm.
or even in some of the others, that are the common areas, so would that become a city thing to take care of those common areas?
No, it would be just like a regular residential development. It would be they would create an HOA.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
would be,
Yeah.
okay. So then
It's
that
just
would be
for the cottages, you basically only own the unit and then maybe part of that land, but usually it's just you own the unit itself and all the other areas are common.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that would be the- Okay, thanks.
well,
I'm really in favor, I like this middle housing, because it will give us a lot more flexibility in tackling the affordability issues. Affordability is always a challenge. And particularly in the for sale market, we really need to emphasize home ownership. Not that renting isn't important, but renting from an affordable standpoint is easier to attain than it is for sale. Because the number of units helps that pencil out for the development.
I thought Jay has some, connections to get some information, and my understanding is we actually have a harder problem, or we have a bigger problem with rentals.
Well, probably
for
building
Apartments.
them in general, probably.
Yeah,
Well,
than housing, correct? Is that still true?
well, because when I look at the CoStar reports, we need more multifamily.
Yeah,
Because we have more demand than supply. It's just that we're constrained by supply. Not enough people are building multifamily. So that's why our vacancy rates are lower than, say, average. Our rent per unit per square foot is higher. It's just harder to rent.
I have seen from a planning standpoint, how hard it is to. I wouldn't say it's harder. We can plan for sale development, whether it gets built or not is a different story. But we always had those incentives of do a density bonus, we can waive fees, we could, we're flexible in those ways. Now, as far as the monitoring, where I came from, the city didn't monitor. We had a affordable senior housing project that was run and administered by a religious organization that specialized in it. And then the small affordable apartment units that we have were county students through the housing board. So, but I really, do, support middle housing.
Yeah, and this program, it might not be big enough to have a housing authority overlook it, because like things like Housing Hope, they do everything, because the whole apartment or the whole development is affordable. So for this one, we'd only be looking at the units that are affordable, so those are the ones we would monitor the market rate ones. So that's something we have to think about how we do that, and it most likely, I'll do some more research, but yeah, most likely it would have to be the city to do that.
Would, the fund be the city also?
Yes.
Okay.
So just taking a look at the Redmond section of the code that I took out the portion that relates to inclusionary zoning, so it's actually under the 40 housing chapter of the Redmond City Code. And so if we decide, if the planning commission decides to move forward with something like this program, I need to do a little more research to see if we can put this, if this has to be in the affordable housing chapter, or if it can go into the middle housing chapter. So another question that I have for you is, so now we have to look at where in the city do we want to implement this program? So if you're looking at the Redmond one, they have different neighborhoods. So just for example, this one's the Willows Rose Hill neighborhood. And then it talks about the density, what the density is, and that at least 20% of the total dwelling units have to be affordable. And then also says you may be able to get a bonus as well. So this is some language that we're looking at is you have to provide at least this percentage in the different neighborhoods. So is there specific areas that you're thinking that a program like this should be implemented? I know we always say downtown, but I know there's some, when we talked about multifamily tax exemption, we kind of want to look at other areas too.
Randy?
I would like it everywhere that new development occurs. That's what we hear from residents that feedback things. They're saying, you know, this place just went up, nothing affordable. This place just went up. So, and then that way, and we know that we currently have demand for our area, and we would get something that way.
Okay.
I like how they did, you know, put it out in different districts. So in Redmond, so that they're calling out certain area, like if this place is 8 or less developed homes, it's this, if it's 8 or more, and their different neighborhoods have slightly different applicabilities, but it's everywhere. And maybe with that same idea that we would look at the different neighborhoods or east, west, downtown, that type of thing.
Okay.
Melanie?
I concur. I would prefer that it's everywhere.
Okay.
Because we have. I also don't, I want us to steer clear of saying, hey, we want it here, here, and here, because then it's. It doesn't seem inclusive that way. It seems like we're designating like, this is where I want these demographics to live. And so I don't know that we should do that. And we have such a huge need. I think we just need to require it across the board. I like the 20% number.
Okay.
If we think that might not be well received, then maybe 15 as the lowest, but I'd like to see it at the 20%. I do like a lot of what Redmond is doing there, but yeah, I would agree across the board.
Okay.
Let's see, let me get Liz first.
Oh, yeah.
Liz?
Thank you. I agree with others that I think throughout the city is better, also because our limited capacity of available land impacts things being able to be built as well. So if we start limiting to just one section of town, I fear that we're going to have a harder time meeting our goals. And as others have pointed out, it reduces the equitability for everybody, so I agree that it should be throughout town, not certain sections only, so. Thank you.
And I agree with that too. In the document, it said that that helps economically, and it helps integrate economically and racially inequity throughout like the school districts too. Like, so these kids could go to all the schools, and I think that it said that they would do 20% better in other areas if it was like all around. So I agree with that. So I think it would help a lot of our different elements of what we're trying to achieve to do that.
Melanie?
Also just, I follow the school district really closely for anyone who doesn't know that, most of you do. As an example too, is that currently, at least we have 5 elementary schools, and Frank Wagner is considered a Title I school, which means that enough percentage of the families attending that school have a low enough income level that the children would qualify for free or reduced lunch. And since the percentage of families that qualify for that is high enough, I don't remember the exact number, it might be 40, but a certain percentage or more qualifies, then the whole school receives funding for it. And now Rylands Elementary, which has been on the edge for years, starting next year is also going to be a Title I school. And I believe one of the middle schools maybe, and then I think the high school is maybe not quite or is on the edge. But the point of that is that we already kind of are seeing that this city has pockets of areas that are, that have more lower income families. And so to spread that out, so that it isn't just congregated to the general downtown area. And then also just to make sure that there is availability and some of the, I don't want to say more desirable, but we don't want there to be pockets of places. And, you talk about we mentioned that some of the cons are that there might be a perception of a change in community character. And I would personally argue that we do need some change in community character, because as it stands, there are pockets and there are people that will view certain areas of Monroe in some light or another versus other areas. And so I think it is really, really important that we're being universal across all of our land.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't disagree that it should be spread out. I just wanted to kind of clarify before when we were talking about the middle housing last time. I know I thought part of that big part of that was that people living in middle housing would have the closer access to jobs and or shopping. So they wouldn't have to go as far. So I just don't know if that fits. Or if that's still the goal, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I do understand and agree of dispersing.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, definitely would be in, like the residential areas, but yeah, I'll have to.
Was that one of the?
Yeah, so one of, because I believe in R7 in the comprehensive plan update that, it still would only allow, duplexes, I believe, right? Not attached housing.
So, but that was kind of the point of middle housing,
Yeah.
is you put it in the R7. Unless the city, so there's a few options. You could look at changing the code and allowing attached housing in all of our residential zones to get that. But, middle housing was that tool to allow it where it's not allowed today. And that's the only residential besides the R4, which at this point in time is being recommended to be eliminated, to help us get to our housing density needs.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So right now, so this program would only, work in the zones that do allow, middle housing, which is attached housing, which is 3 or more. So it wouldn't include the R7 right now, but everything else. So everything else is closer to, commercial areas, transit, things like that.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I mean, the top of the purpose statement says that for any area zoned for residential use that would allow development of a single unit attached residential dwellings. So it doesn't say that it wouldn't be allowed in like R7 or only in R15. It makes it seem like anywhere in the purpose, or like in our code, in the proposed code.
Oh, yeah, okay, so yeah, that might. It's okay,
Yeah,
I think it,
that would actually, I mean, that makes sense
Yeah.
because the House bill that passed with that, the whole intent was trying to get more diverse housing types in traditionally detached residential neighborhoods. So it would work to me the way, and we've reached out to our attorney on this too. It's somewhat of a de facto PRD code or planned residential development where you're getting these densities and you get to be different. That's why you're adopting this code. So yeah, we can confirm that, but I'm almost positive that was part of the task that the state gave us.
So you're saying that attached shared wall housing in R7 will be enough?
But only if the applicant is doing middle housing. It has to be following this code because it works similar to a PRD.
What would the drawback be of allowing attached units in R7? Just with that, just market rate?
Well, it would be, my suspicion is what we're experiencing right now with the downtown where classic old homes are being converted to these attached townhomes. But then we're still being tasked with displacement, which is one thing that I need to come back to you when we have the housing element of what areas of the city would you be willing to see this change in order to protect a particular part of the community?
Well, again, I think that's why we're saying any new development should be required to do this, because then you're getting at those ones, kind of like Liz was mentioning, that we don't know where people are gonna develop, but what we keep seeing a lot of is actually vacant stuff turning into single family housing, or the classic home being taken down and that lot getting densified. So, yeah, if this is gonna work, I think it has to be for anything. If it's not gonna, it's only gonna be a certain density of development like R15 and above, then I don't think that this is gonna be as impactful. So I think we need some clarification on how we can get it everywhere. Even like the one that we just said, the new development, that 5-1, like if that would have been it and 20% is required, then one of those would have been affordable housing.
okay,
So,
yeah, well, I'll get some.
and then that's at
clarification.
least, a start.
Yeah, okay.
So Brandon, you've expressed interest in retaining and maintaining historical homes, like 100-year-old homes on Main Street. So we would do that by designating them historical homes in some way to make sure that they couldn't be redeveloped, or how would we
Do
go
we
about
have a
doing that?
historic home program?
We do not, and the city, I can tell you from a historical perspective, in the early 2000s, that was something that the Monroe Historical Society was looking at. That was part of the downtown master plan. It is not supported by property owners because it does put restrictions on what they can and cannot do with the interior and exterior of their buildings. The hard part is to get the money that those programs allow, you have to commit. The idea that I had thought about when we were discussing this, last year, was trying to figure out some kind of an incentive where if you maintain especially along Main Street, the beautiful homes along Main Street, you get some kind of a density bonus to keep the house if you've got land to build around it. So I was not looking or thinking about a historic preservation program, just because the feedback we have received is not in favor from property owners.
Well,
Yeah, we had that same. You've got to work and be flexible with the developer. I know of a case where we had a developer wanting to build a housing development, and there was one of our probably most prized historic old houses there, and he wanted to keep it for himself and live in it. And for the city, we would not we did not support that at all. For him to get anywhere in the development process, he was gonna have to work with us. And we would find a place to move that house. We actually moved the house from there to another historic farm setting, and we preserved the house. And we gave them incentives to allow us to do that. And we saved the house.
I mean, I think that's kind of the opposite of what I'm talking about. I wouldn't wanna like disallow someone to keep a single family home in our historic downtown area, which is what it sounds like happened where he's at, and make them move it. That's not what I'm.
We paid for the house and we moved it ourselves on city funds through a grant.
Yeah, so keeping them where they are is what I'm talking about. It's different, not just preserving them for the sake of preserving them, but sorry, there was something else I was thinking about when, there are some voluntary, like downtown Everett and their historic area, they have like a voluntary program where people can get their house recognized for the year and like what district that they're in and things like that. And then it doesn't have those, covenant requirements or whatever when you do any remodeling on it. And then it just kind of makes it like prestigious or something that you have a plaque in your yard. But the other part about what Ms. Lowe was talking about the transit and everything, I think that that's also part of what we're working on with comp plan, right? We're trying to get accessibility to all these neighborhoods, like the trail now or the sidewalk that goes all the way up to Chain Lake, so people can walk down to the movie theater and Fred Meyer and stuff, and we're working hard at the connections from all the neighborhoods, so that's already happening.
Okay, yeah, let me, we'll talk about the R7 zoning, because for right now, that was the only residential zoning that wouldn't allow attached. So I'm going to check on that to see if, it would require a code change for that. So we could do it with the middle housing code if that's something that we decide to do.
We'd be a little ahead of the game right now if we would have done R7 zoning in 2015.
Right.
That's such a hill to climb.
Right, and this could be our last, push, and at our forecasting, we're only looking to need like, what, 2,500 housing units or something? So, I mean, this is our last build out of 2,500, so if we want to get at least a quarter of them to be affordable, this is the only chance.
That number's for just the next 20 years. Go ahead, Melanie.
And this is just a comment. I know that, we look at the, historically support and lack of support. And I know there's some things that may get proposed that may not get supported, moving forward. We are not the ones with the authority to make the decision. The city council is. That said, just as an example, the downtown master plan was 15 years ago or more. And so maybe it wasn't supported then, but things change, and I worry about this is a personal opinion, and it's not reflective of any entity or anything, but it just to say that because it wasn't supported then, that we can't potentially move forward with it now. To me, it kind of gives the whole NIMBY not in my backyard attitude that I think Monroe, as a character, historically as a character, and as some people perceive it, that's been a piece of things that's been problematic for some people. And so moving forward, I hate for us to not discuss things because, 15, 20 years ago, and it's not just this is just anything, that just because 10, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't supported, and maybe we don't think it's going to be supported because there's so and so and so and so in place. I think that it's still worth having the discussion, talking about the need and moving forward, and not ruling it out just because things weren't supported in the past or it's been done this way in the past, because part of what we're tasked with is to making progress, moving forward, doing new things that haven't been done in the past, like with avoiding the displacement and making sure we have equity included in our comprehensive plan and all the things. So again, just blanket statement, blanket over everything, as just a reminder that I think it's still worth discussions. And obviously, if it's something that isn't going to be supported now, having that discussion and knowing that, hey, that's not supported now is still worth it. It may prolong some things, that it may go forward and then get kicked back to us or whatever. But that's part of the process. That's part of what we're tasked to do as well. And discussion, even just having discussions can be valuable, whether whether something changes or not from those discussions. So I just wanted to throw that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I want to clarify, it wasn't the council
Yeah.
or the planning commission, but it's the property owners who are impacted by these additional regulations. I also will let you know, I know, my understanding is there is still interest, especially by the Historical Society, to revive that type of a program. And of course, they would have to come to you as the starting point if it becomes regulation for the city, but the challenge is if you don't have the property owners, it's hard to sell.
Like I said, blanket,
Yeah.
like not just
Yeah.
that came up here. This is just a statement to say it from now and moving forward as a reminder.
Let's start with
Yeah.
planning.
I like what you're talking about moving to the future, and like what Jay said, that we'd be ahead of the game, because that's kind of what we're trying to do, is forecast, like, what's gonna be the newest, thing in 15 years when these things finally get developed out. I wanted to say one more thing about the proposed code, so, the off-street parking, and then having an on-street credit. I know we all want to move forward to nobody having cars, but this is not Seattle. This is a rural suburb where we know that everyone commutes to work, right? We've got studies after study about this. Everybody has a car here, and most people actually have more than one car because they need more than one income for homes, even if they're going to be affordable. So in hearing feedback from the community about on-street parking that is affecting their neighborhoods in areas that were not built out with enough parking. If we have zero parking and only have them have on-street credit, I feel like that when we say a character of a neighborhood getting changed, that's a huge impact to the people who are already there. And we're gonna try to limit that. So I'm not in favor of on-street credits.
Okay, so.
So that is a big reason that the R7 should have shared wall housing, is because that's a big enough space to have parking off street, right?
Yeah.
And you have to say it, light rail is not coming to Monroe. So
BRT.
don't pretend it's ever right?
So even again, back to the summer development we just saw, if they all had credit for on-street, which they could have applied for probably, or in this case, maybe gotten, that there's only about 10 stalls like on that whole 3-block radius, so it would have impacted that neighborhood hugely. They all have a driveway and a garage, which is the right thing for that neighborhood, so continuing with that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Anita, please.
Oh, no, I was just, so I'm hearing that, so not allowing a reduction in parking, just go with the standard 2 per unit or whatever it is. Okay.
Carla.
I know this is kind of a little off topic, but kind of what you're talking about, the whole historical. I don't know a ton about how you go, how you go about changing that, but can an individual homeowner decide that they would like to make their home an historical home, or does it have to be a program that the city has?
So right now, my understanding, they do have options. They can either go through the National Historic Program or possibly the state. But it would be, and I have to double check if the city has to have a program or they can just request their. I will get back to you on that. I just
I
had
know
training
that
on that
topic.
and it's like off.
I know that topic is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, I can bring it back to this discussion at another meeting.
No, that's a good point, because I know that you can apply for that. I just don't know what the requirements are.
Yeah, I don't know all the ins and outs of that, and it is an interesting.
Kelsey.
I didn't see, or I might have missed if there's any where developers have to put back in trees or anything like that, or if we're doing anything like that, because even on the environmental element, runoff and just how much that impacts the land wherever all around you. Those kind of things, trees and foliage will help with all of those things. And I don't know if there's any in that, or if this would be the appropriate place for that.
Yeah, it's not in this code, but, we do have landscape regulations, so it would refer to that chapter on these developments. So there are landscape requirements, yes. Any, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, on that same topic,
Yes.
so, a little different than like landscaping, but like when we have talked about this before, how we get, when a developer clears an entire lot of large trees that actually provide shade and are established, and then getting something like that back. So, we have talked about if we were gonna try to put that in the code for future, like after the comp plan, because it is mentioned a little bit in comp plan stuff about, I think it's even in the land use, comp plan that we have to look at tonight. There's a part about tree canopy, replacing tree canopy and stuff, but, so how to get it more aggressive like that, not just making sure that they have, put in like their grass strip and stuff like that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's something that, does require, yes, it does require a new code for that, because we don't have a tree protection or tree requirement as far as what you're talking about, the tree canopy, but, I know it's on the list at some point to work on it, so.
And there are other communities that already have that adopted, so it's,
Kirkland has it.
Edmonds does as well.
Developers hate it, but
Yeah.
it's important because we can't get those things back. And also just like the erosion of the ground. And also just we're the stewards of the land in Monroe and imagining Monroe. And if we're just gonna go clear cut and that's not like following Imagine Monroe. I would like for us to be aggressive on that. Thanks for bringing that up, Brandy. But how can we do that without developers just leaving too? I think like sides of tree trunks would be like a great place to start. I don't know, just like the older trees. Because it really affects everything. And less AC, less, emissions and all that.
Well,
I definitely agree with both of you. I think that is definitely a problem with a lot of indoor developments, like the house I currently have, there's not a single tree. And I hate it. And I think there should be. And then you have HOA, so you have to get approval for anything like that you put in, and it makes it even harder. Where we need to have trees. I mean, so it's about a part of our economic, but not economical, ecological system.
Randy,
Off the same thing, so like we're saying, if all these other cities are already doing this, right? The other cities that are similar to us, or other cities that developers are looking at to come to. And they get there and they have all the same stuff we do, so we all have a requirement for, the middle housing that's got affordability. We all have requirements for, preserving or replacing large trees and all the other things. So it's gonna, they're gonna, it's an equal playing field then, because we're all being progressive at the same time.
don't we?
Yes. I feel like we're veering off a little bit from the middle housing, but if we're talking about the trees. Also something to keep in mind, like we're dealing with a little bit of this in my little section of the Frylands, because obviously we have this nice trail system that I love in the Frylands, by the way. But like the little neighborhoods put up the trees when they were built, and I live in a neighborhood that was built roughly 25 years, I guess 25 years ago now. And the trees that went in around the trails and stuff were put in back then, so now they're significantly larger. Like I think some neighbors said that when they first went in, they could see the fireworks from the fairgrounds from the mountain. You can't see, you can hear it, you cannot see a thing now because the trees are huge. And the root system is under the trails. And I think there was some discussion that came up from this where the city actually says some of that is under the authority of like the HOAs. But then you have, like, we have a neighborhood that then attaches to another, we have an HOA that's active, but one street over, I don't think they're very active. And so like, there's dangerous, my kids have fallen on their bikes and stuff on the trail. And so I'm just sitting here thinking, when we're talking about the tree stuff, there's also long-term, like what is that tree going to do in 20, 25 years? Who is responsible? Because if an HOA is not maintaining where they're supposed to maintain, and now all of a sudden this stretch of trail is like hazardous for kids and people to walk over or bike over or whatever, who does, so there's just another little layer of things to keep tabs of. But I think that the landscaping stuff is probably a discussion in another part of the comp plan. But this just little details that sometimes get missed in the discussion. Cause I imagine that got missed in the discussion that applied 25 years ago because there's problems now. So, just little things.
Yeah, and I think some of the other cities' tree codes, they address that in their code. They talk about having a covenant on the property for maintenance and things like that. So, but yeah, that's a good idea to make sure we put that in there. Okay, any other comments? We're gonna be, doing another draft of this code. It sounded like the commission was in favor of adding the inclusionary home program zoning. So I'll work with that, taking out some of the parking stuff. And then, just double checking to see if, appropriate to put this in the middle housing code, affordable housing code, or revising them both at the same time, and then also looking at the R7 zoning to allow attached housing. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one other thing you were gonna talk about is, the oversight, like what
Oh,
options
yes.
we would have
Yes,
for,
yes.
okay.
For
Who would
monitoring and
have
compliance.
oversight
Yeah.
if there happens to be a Snohomish County Housing Authority that would allow us to tag in with them.
Thank you.
Ready for new business?
Yes.
Okay.
All
Section
right.
6.1, 2024 comprehensive plan update from Kate.
All right, so this evening I have the first draft of two different chapters for you. The first one is the natural environment, and I was realizing I should have probably cut and paste the introduction to this chapter, which we went over last year because it had a lot of the attachments. And we are not looking at doing the climate change amendments with this. There's just not enough time for us. The state has allocated funding through the Department of Commerce through 2029 when we're required to. I'm hoping we can get to this way before 2029, but I just want to be very clear with you. This is really addressing the other items that we are required to comply with. So in the memorandum, or the agenda bill, excuse me, just really outlined the different things we're trying to comply with. Most importantly, imagine Monroe. Again, the very first sentence is a lively center surrounded by nature, a place of beauty and goodwill. Further down, it talks about our parks, waterways, environment are healthy and accessible for everyone to enjoy. So to me, that is, I think Alex said it best last Wednesday, it's really our guiding star. That's how we're really looking at things now. That being said, we are also not starting from scratch. We have many layers of red tape, if you want to look at it that way, or regulations that we need to go through. The Washington State Growth Management Act. The Puget Sound Regional Council, I tried to identify some of the items that are there. And again, the Growth Management Act, then it's multi-county, which for us is the Puget Sound Regional Council, King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap counties. The next layer after that is Snohomish County, and then into our own plan. So this really is just, I wanted to walk you through this. This is your homework assignment. I'm hoping you all will have an opportunity to look at it and send me comments by June 21st, that's a week from this coming Friday. If you want me to send you the Word document, I am happy to do that. Everything you've been sending me so far, we have been incorporating, so I am up for whatever tool I can provide you for comments. So just an overview of chapter 10. Again, it's the shoreline and natural environment. Or forget, we also are required to update the shoreline master program, but that got pushed out to 2027. So we do have some additional work to do, but not now. So like the rest of the chapters, it provides an introduction to the chapter. It talks about the relationship to all the other plans that we're trying to comply with. And then it gets into the specifics for Monroe, starting with hydrology, talks about our watersheds. And if you've looked at the current plan, this is very similar in the format, talking about the soils, our wetlands, which I actually want to work with our consultants a little bit. When we had our full-blown critical areas inventory, it's very outdated. We chose not to do that with this, but there are a lot of other sources out there, Department of Ecology, Fish and Wildlife. And so I'd like to make sure that as part of our requirement for best available science, that we're citing all of those sources that are more current. So in the goals and policies, I can't remember, that might be one I need to get back to them. And then just a brief overview of our critical areas, talking about wetlands, streams. You will see there are still some comments in here from senior leadership, myself, and the review team. The shoreline has just a brief introduction because we actually do have our own shoreline master program, and it's also codified in the Monroe Municipal Code Title 22. And we have a very brief section about climate change. This is kind of like just a little introduction, but the majority of the work, which does actually require an inventory of the tree canopies, we have to look at greenhouse gas reductions. That will be coming at a later date, but I wanted to make sure that there's some introduction in the plan as we're moving forward this year. And then the goals and policies. And again, my hope for you to review is this what you expected? Do you see things that are missing? Do you have questions about some of the choices of words, goals and policies? And so that's really what I'm looking for input. The next time you see this, if it's not a significant change, will be when we're doing the full draft plan later in August. If you have significant rewrites, we may be coming back, like the housing element. I've gotten one piece back. I've gotten edits on another piece, and I understand the third one is with the consultant team. So I've asked that I want all of that compiled so I can come back to the Planning Commission and CHSAB. There were a lot of discussion of both bodies. So that, any questions if you've already reviewed?
So the other element that you said that we're not doing till 2029, what is that again?
Climate change, and that was,
And they don't go hand in hand with each other.
I'm sorry, say that
They
again.
don't go hand in hand with the environmental.
They do, but it's a lot more work. We have to do inventory.
Happening faster though.
I don't disagree. It just,
Is there any way that we can vote on that, or that it's like, it's just already said that that's not happening? Cause like schools being closed because of smoke, like we're already being fully affected by the environment, and we're deciding to do more development because we need people, which is gonna just change. It's how can we just overlook that?
we're not overlooking it. The issue is that was a change in the Growth Management Act that was adopted last year. The scope for this project was adopted 2 years ago. I have a limited budget. And I just don't have, honestly, I don't have time and staff and resources to do it and adopt it by December of this year. So it is one of the items that I have identified. I would say advocate for, when you talk to your council, we can put that in the minutes as well. But as it stands, I just don't have the resources to get it done this year.
Okay, will there be grant money available? before
Yes, there will.
2029? Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the answer.
Each city is, the pot of money has been identified for all jurisdictions that are required to do the climate change. So it's just a matter of getting it into our program of work. And I have identified it for 25, 26. I know it is a concern for the mayor.
Diamond?
I know you said you have specific suggestions or edits or whatever, but I wanted to look at two things. So
Sure.
one's on page 179 and 180. So also I wanted to just mention, I know you guys had mentioned that the reordering of this is gonna be easier. So I think we're seeing that in example, like, cause it shows from the 2015 comp plan, like all the random pages, right? Some stuff's on page 12, some is on 180. So like, this is showing me that the stuff's all condensed now in one place, which is easier, right? Like for the update, which that's cool. And then there's a lot of new stuff, which also is cool. One of the ones on 180, it actually does talk about in, the very first one, 10.9.2.1, enhance urban tree canopy to support community resilience, mitigate urban heat, manage stormwater, conserve energy, improve mental and physical health, and strengthen economic prosperity. Like that's sums up everything. That's cool. And then it's gonna be in here, so we could also refer to that if needed for. Then the other ones I have a question on though is like on the 179, there's a new 10.92. It's just like improve community resilience. And then there's like not any specifics with that. So it's good that it's in there because it means that you can, you know, kind of you could quote that if you wanted to show the city, hey, you said in your code that you want to improve the community resilience, but is that like just, we're gonna keep adding to that?
I think this got missed. The Growth Management Act, the things that we have to do by the end of this year was, we need to be working on resilience and preparation specifically when it comes to capital improvements. I think I've mentioned this before, but Monroe is really lucky with the treatment center. There are a lot of cities where the treatment center is in the floodway. They have to figure out some way in the future to pay to move it out. So they're talking about sea level rise. Other things are the location of facilities and how to respond to windstorms. That's what this is getting at. So it's an incomplete statement.
Or the other thing I just realized is maybe is that supposed to be like the header of that chapter? Because all the ones that are 0.1 are kind of more vague. And then the ones that have multiple digits after that kind of expand on that first thing. So maybe that's just me not reading this correctly. Like 10.71 is support clean drinking water. And then all the stuff under that, like 1.1, 1.2, then that has more specifics. So maybe I was just
But I think the resiliency, at least the GMA amendments are really talking about the city's ability to respond and it's not just natural hazards anymore. They're also talking about like train derailments if they've got coal or fuel in them. So I'm gonna work on this. It needs to be a little bit more specific.
I think that on the Parks and Rec one, it had similar stuff, but then it has action items on it. Are those getting added into this or are these the action? They're
That
like
is
very specific.
Yeah, that is a great question. So the park plan is really unique. It was done to meet the requirements of another state agency, so it's a little bit different. And one of the things that we've been going back and forth with a consultant is what is the final format? So my preference is you have a goal statement and then you have policies and then you have action statements. So that's still in development. This does not cover all of it.
So the whole nother section of action items will be added, okay?
That's the hope.
I like that format.
I do too, because that Parks and Rec one was so clear on
Okay,
how
that's-
things, and it also felt like you were reading it, as like, it was easy for me to read, it was easy for like, I think anyone to read. And I think that I commented on that on the other ones too. Okay. Because it was just very clear on what needs to be done, and then also the community can say, if they don't have to tell someone what's going on, these things are going on. A way to measure that. But that was really good. And yeah, I thought we had to read this already, but yeah, I thought for the most part, like, it's great.
Okay, we're getting there. The hope is that you read it, but I know you all are very busy, just like the rest of us, and so I wanted to give a couple weeks for feedback. I know you really.
I didn't do the other one.
Oh. You're usually so prepared. Thank you. It's a lot. We're asking you to read a lot. Were there any other comments?
But I just kind of touching for the climate change. I mean, a lot of this to me, even though I know climate change has so much to it. And I understand what you're saying. But even so, some of the things that we're doing here, it really does affect a lot of the climate change stuff. I know it's not everything, but different things, yeah, so I mean, some things do still are gut pain and working toward those goals, I think, without even having to really work on the kind of control.
Yeah, I mean, another example, when we get to the, something that we're doing this year in the transportation element, I think, well, I brought it to you, that multimodal level service standard. That's another tool trying to reduce the number of vehicle trips, but Monroe is unique in the sense that a lot of people need their vehicles, and so it's not an easy community to serve, and we don't have good transit, and there are no plans for, really frequent, so we have to work with what we've got. Okay, if there are no more, walk through land use. And again, same thing, if you could look through this and send me comments by June 21st. I'm not gonna run through all the regulatory, you can read through that. So on this one, it's also, again, very similar to the existing plan where we're talking about what is the inventory, existing patterns. I did ask the consultant to try to use some of the same geographies that were in the 2015 plan. My understanding is a lot of thought went into that with the regional corridor along US 2, the tourist commercial by the fairgrounds. Then they had, I can't remember all the terms, but this is trying to use that on page 191, talking about existing development patterns. It also includes what our allocations are from Snohomish County for population, housing, employment. It is broken out from the city, the urban growth area, and our total requirement. And then you'll see there's a lot of holding spots for maps and additional information coming. And then it really gets into, again, very similar to the 2015 plan where it talks through the different land use designations, what the characteristics would be, what the complementary zoning is. And then the goals and policies. And this one, I feel like we still need a lot of work. So it just feels light to me on the policy. So if there's anything that is really standing out to you that we have missed, one of the things that we've been using as a tool is this has to be certified by the Puget Sound Regional Council, and they have a full checklist of things that you need to cover. So I know the consultant team has been looking at that. But if there are things that you see missing, I would really appreciate your feedback. And this one's pretty thin, so easy to get through. And that's it for introductions tonight.
Thank you, Kate. And page 193, future land use. So these numbers are current numbers that we should have on our mind for
Yeah, these
housing and employment targets.
These are the ones, in fact, they've been updated. They are beyond what are in the Snohomish County-wide planning policies. They are consistent with the draft plan. I think I mentioned before, the county is about 1.5 years ahead of us. My understanding is they will be hopefully holding their public hearings in August, but they have adjusted, especially the housing numbers have gone up. The employment numbers have gone down for the unincorporated portion of our UGA. The housing, some of that was adjusted up as a result of all of us having to provide housing by income band. So these are hot off the press.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
You ready for community development monthly report?
Sorry, I have one question. Earlier, Anita had mentioned that discussion about R4 going away. Is that something that is gonna be through the comp plan, or how would that happen?
Yeah, so that actually, if the planning commission and the council think that's a good idea, part of so it's gonna be a two-step process. The comp plan gets adopted with the new land use designations, and I would be following that up with a concurrent, citywide rezone. And so that's how that would work. So when we get to October and November, you'll be holding a public hearing on the comp plan, and right after that, depending on the preference, you would also be holding a public hearing on the complementary zoning code changes and the zoning map and the zoning code.
What do you have for us, Anna?
All right, so since we didn't have our last meeting of the month last month, you're seeing the April department report for community development. So starting with the highlights, numbers are up all across the board. For building permits, both of those numbers have gone up by 4. Code enforcement and business licenses are both up. Nothing really substantial with business licenses. We had 2 pre-application meetings in the month of April. One is a 2-lot short plat at the intersection of Kelsey and Monroe Street. And one is a tenant improvement for a Sports Clips barber shop. This is in the Safeway Shopping Center. As we discussed tonight, our project highlight for the month is the Summer Lane development. It's a 5-unit attached housing project that started in January 2023 as a site plan review. Once site plan review approval was granted, civils and building permits were applied for, and they started construction right away in October once they got their building permits. And they got their final building approval with inspections in April. And all of the units have been sold, and I believe one of them is still empty. It's for rent right now. I looked it up and it's 1,200 square feet and it's going for 2,900. So. Yeah, and this was the same developer. I don't know if you've seen they look like they're attached housing units, but they're technically single family detached. They're on Arthur Lane, just off of Kelsey Street. So they look kind of like similar in style to this. It's the same developer.
Quick question.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily just specific to this, but I'm looking at, the site plan review being in January of 2023. And then with the permits and everything being issued basically in October 2023, that's getting close to it's about 9 months and stuff. Is that pretty standard? I know that each thing can be a little different just because different issues, challenges or whatever can crop up. But is that pretty standard for Monroe? And then furthermore, how does that maybe compare with other cities? Maybe that's a question bigger than just today.
I don't know about other cities. I know compared to, say, like Snohomish County, our timelines are pretty good. I've heard that it can take a long time to get permits through Snohomish County. For a project like this, that's a pretty standard timeline. For site plan review, it really depends on the complexity of the project. Like for the Snohomish Regional Fire and Rescue, they had to go through site plan review for their shop addition, and that one only took like 1 round of reviews, so it was out the door in about 5 weeks. So that's the usual timeline for site plan review. Yeah.
I'd say the other thing that kind of assisting me with is one of the code amendments I'll be bringing to you later this year is we are now required to track how long all of our projects are taking, and it's part of specific to residential. And if we don't meet the timelines, then we have to start refunding applicants. So it's a 2-parter of seeing how we're doing and also accountability.
Couldn't that possibly lead to people hurrying through reviews? I mean, why would Snohomish County be incentivizing you to
The
hurry?
county. It's the state, and The desire is, there's so much focus right now on not having enough housing, that there are interest groups that successfully brought ideas forward, and thought was push the clocks.
Is there another interest group that's ensuring that all the boxes get checked on reviews?
Up to us.
Yeah, and there's specific types of reviewed projects and applications that we have to meet certain timelines with. And they are changing the timelines that we have to meet reviews under as well, with that House bill passing. So it's, things like, plats, short plats, binding site plans, multifamily development, and the civil reviews that are associated with that. So it's really specific, so it's not just like all building permits,
It's a housing.
it's housing focused specifically. So it's the land use side of things, it's not really building permits.
This changing of timeline and how things gotta get done, are you guys finding it much harder, or is it doable? Is
We'll
it-
see. I mean, it's.
I know you
haven't
can't change
checked
it, but I just wanted, do we have a problem kind of like what you're alluding to, or? is
Well,
it
I'll tell you, one
together?
of the biggest challenges, not only are they changing the clock, so for example, a site plan review, we're allowed hundred and 20 days, but that 120, we can stop the clock, not only, or you stop the clock whenever you ask for additional information, that's not changing. But how a lot of communities, including Monroe, is we would not include weekends because you're not working on the permit, and you would take out holidays. The code or the way it was rewritten is it's calendar days. And so not only has the time gotten smaller, we also lost the days that we're not working. So I'm optimistic. We're a small and mighty team. But we'll see.
But it does affect the affordability of projects, or the fact that they get built at all, because we used to, for a project like this, we would land 15-month term. From, application to finish, right? Now it's 18 months, so that extra 3 months, they have to pay interest on the developer. And they have to make a certain profit margin to make it pencil, if it's a market rate project. So if they can't make that profit margin, if their timelines are extended and they're paying interest on more months, they just won't do the project, right? So it's kind of in everybody's best interest for municipalities to figure out, how to streamline the process. Seattle was bad. So our builders were taking out 24-month loans when it used to be 15 months, just because everything was so backed up in the city of Seattle, which makes them not want to do projects, or it just costs them money and they have to raise the price of the end product, what they're selling them for. So
It doesn't make sense. I just want to watch out for that other part.
Yeah, and it doesn't go into effect until, next year, so on January 1st, and we have to start reporting to, Department of Commerce in March of next year. And we have to report all of our numbers for 2024 in March of next year. So we've already started the tracking, so we'll see.
But that gets back to the original question, is this average for us? We can start pulling the data for you.
Yeah. Moving down to current projects. Oh, my file's not wanting to think. There's not many updates on here, besides under site plan review for the Milt Smith townhomes, the 6-unit townhouse building and the 15-unit apartment complex, that's on the very end of Park Street, that has been approved.
And is that vacant land?
It is.
Yeah, it's right on the east side of the food bank.
Food bank.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yep, and then, the Duval Rio Vista variance, that has also been approved. There's been some civil construction that's also been completed, so Eaglemont 9, Eaglemont 8, and Garibaldi have all finished their civil work. We've revamped the way that we are showing, our building permits. So give me feedback on if you like how this looks. So now we're showing you, what used to be called multifamily, it's detached, attached housing. Instead of single family, it's detached housing. Commercial TIs are still being reported. And then I'm also showing you our residential building permits. So that's things, like, residential remodels, decks, demolitions, things like that. So it's just some more information for you guys to see what our department is up to, every year and, yeah, year to date. I know that the numbers get kind of squished when they're all pretty similar, so it's kind of hard to read.
We had a request on this one, I believe it came from the council. There was a question about the number of applications you're reviewing versus the ones that have been issued. So we now have 2 graphics. Yeah, still in work, so definitely provide feedback.
I mean, I don't remember what the other one looked like right this moment, but this seems
I like this.
helpful, understandable.
Good.
And no updates from the building department on their information there. In code enforcement, 4 open cases and 11 resolved. And the news from Kevin, due to an influx of signage complaints, so temporary signs, there's going to be a citywide sign cleanup. So getting unpermitted temporary signs picked up. We sent out notices through social media, the local businesses, things like that, letting them know that we're gonna be picking up unpermitted temporary signs.
Or we should have a YouTube tutorial for business applicants. So they understand that there is a sign code.
Yes, please.
And if you say, shake your head if you understand, and if they don't understand, no business license.
I think it's a great idea, but I handle temporary signs and sign permits, so that means I'm gonna have to do the YouTube video.
You could have Clint Eastwood do it or something.
Yeah, make plans.
So I brought up sign, sorry, I didn't wait my thing. I brought up sign concerns last year heading into the political season, and then I went and filed for office, so then it kind of felt like it would be too personal to talk about it again. But now that we are heading into yet another heavier political season, and you're seeing them crop up in places already, what is that something that we can put on as a discussion and potential action item? To kind of just look at our sign code and see, I with this, I'm not super bothered by the businesses. I know that sometimes they get cluttered and then, you know, the city decides to do something, but in terms of the political stuff, it's gonna get out of hand real quick. And so I'm just wondering if there isn't a way for us to look at making that more, you know, how to make it more inclusive and universal and stuff. And then also, obviously, I know there's the enforcement piece is that, you know, it's limited on what staff may have the capacity for at any given moment, but at least the last round, we had signs up in like January for the next November election that never ended up with a permit and they just kept speckled. So just little things like that and ways we can look at making that either cleaner or just, I mean, maybe less restriction on the political signs for a period is what is needed. Just to kind of make it more inclusive and equal across the board.
I'll see what we can do.
Let me get to Bob first, Brent.
Does the sign ordinance prohibit campaign signs in the public easement area?
It cannot be a site obstruction around corners. I know there was some concern last year about public, do you remember?
Yeah, so they can't be in the right of way, they can't be in, the center
Center.
strips.
Strips.
They can't be in roundabouts, like Kate said, can't be site
On
obstructions.
corners, they cannot be on, a lot of people post things on the chain link fences under 522. That's actually private property, owned by WashDOT. That's a no-no.
So when the code enforcement will go out and remove those signs and call the candidate or whoever put it up and say, come get your sign.
Yeah, at least since I've been here, the city does a really good job about pushing letters out to all those who are running for position. You should have gotten one talking about the do's and don'ts.
Yes,
They go
I
up.
did last year. It was,
Yeah.
I can't remember what the timeline was of it, but like there were already signs
Right.
months
So-
before
It was
that.
already a
because-
code enforcement
Yeah,
problem.
because people
What I've
can
seen-
declare before they have to file, because they're raising money soon. It just gets really messy really fast.
What I've seen is when a candidate files, he gets this packet of info. And one of the things in the info is the sign ordinance that they have to sign. They agree to it, and that they will take the signs down after 14 days after the election.
I don't think that's how it works in the state.
No, and then it's not the same everywhere. So like when you get your state and your county candidates and stuff, Monroe's unique, so not everywhere in the county requires the permits, whereas Monroe does. So you've got campaigns that'll just go and speckle them where they've seen them. And then if it gets, like, if you get the big campaigns that are making, $500,000 on the campaigns, they lose some signs here and there. They don't care. Their people just come back and put them back. And so.
Little locals who go out.
Where,
chase our
and then
signs
there's the
down.
local, and then like Monroe doesn't this is just an example, Monroe doesn't usually have primary races. But last year there were, and so there's a certain amount of days that a campaign sign's allowed to be up. So you had race that technically they couldn't, if they were gonna have their signs up again for November, technically speaking, they could only have them up for this amount of time here, take them down and then go put them back up. But there's just little pieces that I'm just wondering if there isn't a way for us to look at it. That maybe we do just with political signs, maybe they're permitted in the city.
From
Like
X
it's
to X.
specific from this date to this date, period.
No.
And so, and that's just
I
something
have
that I'm
seen
wondering
the
if
ordinance
it's worth
state-
talking about.
That political signs are forbidden in the public easement. They're only allowed in private property with the owner's permission.
That's how it was in the city I lived in.
Yeah.
In California.
So that eliminated all that kerfluffle.
Yeah, and in our sign code, we can't say political signs, it's non-commercial,
Uh-huh.
so that could
That's a
be.
challenge.
Yeah,
right?
that, so we
First-
can't, so that's the
Yeah.
only problem, there could be other types of, groups out there that can put signs up too, so.
So, and I also wholeheartedly support a YouTube video. Signs thing, I got involved in a Facebook kerfluffle with some dude that was complaining about our staff in Monroe. And I took exception to that, and I asked him to please email. So he emailed me this whole drawn out thing where he's communicating with staff constantly. And staff is communicating with him, and yet on Facebook, he made it sound like the city wasn't doing anything to help. I hate that.
Bob, that's what my comment was in reference to.
Yes,
You would be wise not to engage with those type of folks.
I will not engage with him.
Just a recommendation. Randy, did you have something to get us off this week?
Back to the signs, like, I don't know how much of an issue they are, or the difference between the political or the other ones, but prevention is always better, right? So if you guys say they already get packets and there's already information in there, maybe we're already trying to prevent it, that's like the only thing I was thinking that could help, or, it might be worth our staff's time that when they're doing the code, especially now there's like 2 new CSO officers, right? Isn't that partially what they're doing is code enforcement stuff?
No, that's
Not this kind of code.
That's
Okay.
our department,
Yeah, cause like, I guess calling those candidates, and making it clear that they're doing something wrong in Monroe might be helpful to prevent them to continue to put them back up, but we're all not chain link fence, you know, maybe WashDOT puts a sign that says, no, they're not, you know, not, signs aren't allowed here or something, but it seems like it's always better for trying to prevent this stuff.
And my only reason for, suggesting that was business owners that might be new to being business owners, they might not understand there is such a thing as a sign code. And so they might just think it's a free-for-all, but
You guys are doing a good campaign though, because I know on the website I've seen where it's talking about the how to get a temporary sign, thing and that they're required and stuff. So I think you guys are putting the word out there. So I think the prevention's starting.
We'll look into making YouTube.
anything else for us, Hannah?
Nothing, we got some new business licenses, if anyone has questions about these.
What is Evil Industries? I'm concerned.
Evil Industries is a fabrication shop.
You said, wasn't that 666?
You'll see, Monroe Consignment Furniture and Decor has moved into 118 North Lewis, so that's where Thrive Fitness was. So looks like they've got some pretty cool stuff in there.
Hannah, where would we have seen the business application for the tattoo shop? On the corner there, Main and,
I
Oh,
think
that was a previous month, wasn't it?
I think they were on last,
okay,
the month before.
That's great.
Yeah,
I do think we.
well. No, their business license was on hold for a little bit until they got all of their.
Health department.
No, until they got all of their building permits, so it may not have made it onto one of the reports, but they did get a business license.
I thought we thought something like that. Maybe not.
And there's been some revamping of the comprehensive plan section. I don't know if Kate wants to touch on any of that, but
I was gonna give updates for this month, but.
yeah.
Continue to update this, yeah, when we do the go around.
And then there's been no updates to the annexations. Any questions?
Oh,
well,
you little shop next to IHOP, it's gonna be a Starbucks.
The Starbucks, yeah.
When is that gonna open, do you know?
Soon. Yeah, they're getting their final inspections, so I would say like.
Starbucks
works quick,
That was pretty
yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've got their sign permits and everything, getting final inspections, so.
So you bring your Starbucks.
I bet come July, it's worth it. That's my guess.
all right, we ready for discussion by commissioners and staff then? We'll start with Liz.
Thank you. Thanks, staff, for great presentations and commissioners for great discussions, and hope everybody got to go to the senior parade on Friday, kind of the kickoff to graduation week. So yeah, families are coming if they didn't already come in this weekend because traffic was pretty bad. But anyways, just a reminder, yeah, graduation events all start tomorrow. So thank you.
Bob.
I wanna just say how much fun I had on Wednesday at our workshop for the comp plan. I have been to many, many workshops. This was the funnest one I ever been to, and I was very much amazed by the interaction with the public and the sense of commitment they have to the community. I frankly wasn't gonna stay for the whole thing, but I couldn't leave. I was so enthralled with the process. And I'd be very, very interested to see what the readouts on that is gonna look like. The public was there and had great input. So I really enjoyed it, except for the heat. It was very first.
Thanks, Bob. Kelsey?
I agree. It was really fun and I thought it was a interesting way to get people to talk about different elements of our city. And you were there, right? I forgot to mention, if we need these middle housing up, like on chain link or whatever, in that exercise, there was pockets of maybe a little bit of like a grocery store or something
Yeah.
in those other areas. What people were mentioning in that exercise, which I don't think any of us had talked about in our own, like planning commission stuff. So
I agree.
that was really cool. It's really fun. And it was fun to see other people from the community there. It was Pride this weekend. Pride. I'm done.
I completely agree. When I read that we're gonna have this interactive game, game. Ray, what are we gonna have to do? And, I agree, like what Bob said, and it was a lot of fun. I think from our table where I was at, and that I definitely learned a lot, I mean, I am fairly new to Monroe. But it was, like you talked about the different pockets and different things, and I just thought was wonderful information. And then even some of, our group really talked quite a bit about the annexing areas, and good information. And I think that a lot of people, our citizens and stuff would not have spoken up and said things, had it not been in that type of format, that it was really a good way to really get people to open up and talk. And I liked how every group kind of did different focuses, and it was wonderful. I was really glad I attended that.
Ready?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I've been seeing the progression of the community engagement on the forums for open houses on the comp plan that the city's been hosting. I thought the engagement on this one was great, even if, I thought a lot of people showed up, but I liked how, you guys really did an effort to get out to people who are right outside the city limits. I believe you guys sent postcards. That's huge because they're impacted by annexation, and then they've never been coming to things, so they didn't have a voice. And that same consistent thing is what I've been hearing from the start until these ones, which is people want more walkability in their neighborhoods. They want more hubs, where there's multiple things like a store or a coffee shop, and a park, all within their little hub area, a neighborhood nodes type of thing. And, more housing downtown, like apartments by, our Fred Meyer and Lowe's and that type of thing. So, yeah, it was nice to see everyone, and thanks for you guys' effort for putting that on. Yes, it's summer, and school's getting out, and there'll be more people walking around and using our parks. So like I always try to remind, if anyone is watching at home or just us in here, just watch out for all those people out on the roads, especially those little people that'll be trying to find good, wholesome things to be doing this summer and staying out of trouble. So.
Thanks. Yeah, it was good to see. We had a number of commissioners at the planning event. It's great to have interaction with members of the public, get everybody dispersed at a different table and get some input from everybody. Thank you to a very experienced community development team that kind of rolled with the glitch. And
Quite the night.
we had a technology glitch, which kind
The
of
heat glitch, the computer. glitch,
threw everything off a
the
little
food
bit.
glitch.
But it
the
ended
plate
up
glitch.
being, once it got rolling, it was cohesive and everybody seemed to enjoy themselves.
I
And
don't think people missed it. I mean.
It wasn't that noticed, all the glitches, just ran like really cool.
Going, oh my gosh, this isn't working.
well, that's what I'm saying.
It was
If
really
you would
cool
have,
about it.
you would have not
Tap
had
danced really well.
that level of,
Make it to your neighbor.
experienced team to kind of figure out how are we gonna present this without, a PowerPoint demonstration and, not having the rules up or whatever, and you had your facilitators that had a 15-minute
Just
training
training
session.
and the overrating of the effectiveness of PowerPoint. People rely on it too much.
But
You didn't used to have PowerPoint.
your consultant group seemed good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
We were sharp.
we've seen them a lot.
Yeah.
But not in this type of setting, and it seemed to work pretty well, so thank you for that. Melanie?
Yes, I was able to attend Pride over the weekend. I've been to every Pride so far in Monroe, and this year it was a little different for me because I attended as a business for the first time. And so, but it was beautiful. It was muggy within the tents, but it was gorgeous outside and, you know, smiling faces as always, and it really is my favorite community event of the year. Are definitely one of my tops because everybody is always smiling and happy. And there is just this sense of belonging that radiates throughout the whole park. And I don't feel it on that level at, everything in, you know, our county and our community and here in Monroe. But at Pride, like, I feel it. And so it was very well attended. The weather was great and my kids loved the foam cannon from Jump Rattle and Roll last year. They froze in that thing. So, and we didn't plan well. We didn't have a change of clothes or towels, but this year the kids were able to just walk and be soaking wet and be, you know, it was warm enough outside that it was nice. And but it was a great event. And then Juneteenth is this Saturday at the park, so I'm looking forward to attending that as well. And it's just really cool. I learn something new every year that I attend Juneteenth, and I hope that the community shows up for that as well, because there's just a lot of great information that people don't always think about and that not everybody knows about, and bring the kids because everything's family friendly, and I enjoy that every year as well. And then other than that, it's summer, the weather is heating up, and my kids are definitely out on the roads, and my 6-year-old does not always look both ways before he crosses the neighborhood roads. He's left our neighborhood without me knowing before, so yes, please, if you're driving on the roads, be careful of the little people. Because they may be everywhere. And so, yeah, and so school, you know, school's wrapping up. They've got just a couple more weeks here, and well, next week I think is the last one, but next week is even a full week because Wednesday is Juneteenth, so and then they've got some like partial days, so it's wrapping up, and yeah, I love Monroe this time of year, so thank you, staff, for all the information and for answering all the questions. I had questions and listening to our discussion all the time, so just thank you. You guys are rock stars.
So I didn't get a chance to go to the open house, because we were at Monroe High School all day doing the game, the comp plan game, so that was a lot of fun. So I even had Commissioner Nugent's daughter in one of my groups.
You did?
Yeah. She was like, my planning commissioner. So that was super fun. Yeah, just same thing, got a lot of great ideas, got a lot of good feedback from the kids, so that was good. And then Wendy's is coming along, so I still have that project in, so where it should be approved shortly, not for building permits, but for site plan review.
Yeah, they just submitted for their civils.
Okay, maybe next time, yeah.
So no Frosties this summer.
No, unfortunately, no. Frosty.
Sorry, Jay.
Yeah.
I agree.
Actually, I have quite a few things. I did want to go back to actually on the development handout, Monroe 30. So when the council approved the 10% petition, they were very clear that different housing types, the council is expecting to see that as part of the development. So the applicant is preparing a pre-annexation agreement that we're starting to review. And I really appreciated today's conversation because the initial that they were looking at was 10%, but maybe it's more appropriate to have 20% mix. And right now they are in the R7, so the only options that are currently permitted are duplexes and accessory dwelling units, but it's written in such a way that if the city is able to adopt middle housing by the end of the year, that could be incorporated into their proposal. The other piece of that is also in the parks plan, there is identified need for a 5-acre parcel, and I can't remember what percentage has to be active and passive, but that is also in the works, so annexations typically don't get to you. That's really at the council level. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The council is concerned about housing and they're starting to take action where they can. A couple things on comp plan. First off, the environmental impact statement comments are open through Friday for the draft. We have received 6 total comments. So you want to let your friends, family know they have an opportunity for a couple more days. Also, most of you were there on Wednesday night. The board game, you can actually check that out. We have 10 of them. So if you want to run it with your friends, your neighborhood, HOA, PTA, whatever, that is available to you. Also, we have a current survey that is live and active online that will be open through the end of June. I will be actually working with Hannah to get some social media pushes on that. So if, again, you're talking to friends, family, neighbors, cousins, whoever, please encourage them to take the survey. And then just wanted to talk about outreach last Wednesday, because it was, from my perspective, quite phenomenal. We were in 4 senior government civic classes that morning, starting at 7:50, is that right? Yeah. So we were there from 7:50 until 2:20, and then did some stuff and then had the open house. And I really appreciated, I didn't ask the table I was working with in the evening, but I kept asking the students, was this helpful for you? Was this valuable? And everyone said, yeah. So I think it's just a different way of providing the information, because it can be boring to come to an open house and look at boards. So I really appreciate the feedback you all gave us tonight as well. And then yesterday I was at Pride with Leanne, and we had quite a few people stop by. It was pretty fun. We had the boards that I had were the guiding principles, a summary of the environmental process, because that ends pretty soon. And then we had 3 boards that started showing the goals for land use, housing, and transportation. And so I will be out there also on Saturday for Juneteenth. So come visit. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. Yeah, so we're good.
Juneteenth, the Saturday, what times?
12 to 4 at Sky River Park.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one question for Kate about the DSEIS. So this is comments about, okay, I guess my more specific question is, when specific projects come up, they're still gonna have a review process, correct?
It depends on the project. Some of the, for now, most, but a lot of changes were made to the State Environmental Policy Act on the exemption projects. And so that is something that I will be bringing to you later. Right now, it is most commercial developments, and then for residential, like 20 units or more.
That requires the.
Yeah.
Think so.
Critical areas are a requirement as well, but that our rules will probably be changing a little bit, kind of getting back at streamlining our process. If we're doing all of this outreach for environmental review, when we're looking at our comp plans, it should be quicker when you're doing a project. So some of the things, one of the amendments, the most recent one, was basically any infill would be exempt, but our code has not been updated. So really important, if you haven't thought of it in that context, this might be your big opportunity to provide some feedback to us. Yeah, and just environmental review at this magnitude is a little bit confusing. There are 3 phases. So the first phase was we did a notice, a determination of significance. So we sent notice out. What do you want us to evaluate? These are the things we need. You had opportunity to provide comment. This is the second phase, and so all those comments that come in, we provide a comment back, and all that information is collected to both for the Planning Commission and City Council when you go to take final action. And then the final environmental impact statement, we're still having conversations. It can or doesn't have to include a preferred alternative. which would go along with your comprehensive plan, but it includes all of the responses for the questions that came in during the draft, or if somebody says you didn't, there's not enough information on this, that would also be included at that time. And my meeting with our consultant team was this afternoon, and I want to say the next phase is like late July, early August.
So we can make comments as public,
Oh, absolutely.
and it does sound like this is a pretty important stage to make comments in,
I would say yes.
because it might be your only chance.
Yeah.
On certain projects.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify one other thing. In 2015, there was a very robust environmental review. So what we're doing now as a supplemental, it's only looking at the big changes from the 2015. So some of the change in land use, that's really, it's and it's a higher level. Here are the trade-offs, here are the numbers that we're trying to accommodate. These are the things that we looked at. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
What do you have for us, Anna?
Nothing, I've just been going to community events. I went to the Skycomish Valley powwow last month. And that was wonderful. If you haven't been, you should go. They're open to everyone. They're free. I don't know if you've ever been to a powwow, but like, talk about community. It's amazing. Also free hot dogs. And then I also worked Pride on Saturday, and it was just great to see everyone's happy faces. It's just such a wonderful community event. But that's all. Just glad the sun is back.
Okay, thanks, Hannah, appreciate it.
It's if we made it into the 9 o'clock mark.
So are you gonna,
Yes, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second it.
thanks, Kelsey. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for the discussion.
I did not know you could lose this doctor.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.